The United States midterm elections to fill all 435 seats in the House of Representatives and 35 of the 100 seats in the Senate is ongoing now. Democrats are favored to win a majority of the House, while Republicans are predicted to retain control of the Senate. Let me take you through some last-minute headlines in the U.S. media on Election Day. Fox News, NBC, and Facebook pull Trump adverts widely condemned as racists. This was one of the headlines. There's also a referendum on Trump presidency. Well, every vote counts in the crucial U.S. midterm elections. Some of the headlines in the U.S. media. Joining me now in studio is Dr. Eche Sikanko. He's an international politics analyst, communication consultant, and author of the Afrocentric Obama and Lessons on Political Campaigning. He's here to help us analyze and answer I think one of the crucial questions: why should Ghana be concerned? So good morning and thank you for being here.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So if you look at this particular election, some people say it could be a turning point. It could be a reaffirmation of Donald Trump's presidency, or it could be a protest and also saying that the Democrats are liked much better. Please explain this to us.
Yes. So this is the one time that people in the U.S. get the chance to voice their opinion on how the country is being run. So an election is held in 2016. In Ghana, for instance, we have no chance of doing anything or voting until, let's say, in 4 years' time. The midterm election affords voters in the U.S. to demonstrate how they feel about the path that the country is taking, or the direction that the country is going. That's why they call it a midterm. So it's kind of like in school. Remember, during the semester, we have our midterm exams, and that is to evaluate you on the first half of the semester. And then you have the end of semester exams where everything takes place. So in this particular midterm, voters in the U.S. are going to vote for their members of Congress. And these are the same people who were elected in 2016. So, for instance, if you're not happy about, if it was Ghana, you're not happy about your member of parliament, you don't really have to wait until 2020 to demonstrate that, as we've seen with some voters in places like Adenta and other places. I bet you if elections were held today, I think the MP in Adenta will be in trouble, right? So it's the same thing in the U.S. Members of Congress were voted for in 2016. This is 2018. And so they're going to vote again on how they've performed in the past year or past 2 years, and then we move on. The same thing for the Senate, because they have two houses, the House of Representatives and then the Senate, the upper house. So that is the idea behind the meeting. But the biggest skeleton in the room is that people also see it as an opportunity to evaluate the president, or let's call it more a referendum on the incumbent president. And this is how it works. If people are disappointed with the incumbent president and the way he's running the country, they demonstrate this by voting against his party in the congressional and the senatorial elections.
Okay,
right?
but just hold on. They are not voting parties per se. They are voting for individuals.
They are voting for parties because the parties are representing the individuals. But then I understand what you mean. They are not voting. The party is not the one on the ballot.
The president is not on the ballot.
Yes. The president is not on the ballot. Right. So in the presidency, really, you are voting for the president and then the party. Right. So, but with this, it's the lawmakers, the individual lawmakers, but they also represent the political parties. Right. So Donald Trump is not on the ballot, but he's on the ballot in a way. And I'm trying to explain that to say that people's reaction to the president's way of governing the country will be demonstrated by their support for or against his political party. And how that is seen through the party representatives. And who are those people? They are the lawmakers who stand on the party ticket, during the elections to vote. So if you really don't like how the country is being governed, you realize that there's a wave. So in 2016, for instance, the MPP took over the presidency in Ghana. And a lot of big shots in the NDC lost their seats. And we've had that before in 2008 elections, when the opposite happened, and this time the MPP were on the losing side. So it's the same thing. The president might lose a lot of seats in the House or the Senate, depending on how people feel about his governance. And don't forget that in the U.S., the principle of separation of powers is even more entrenched. So Congress has a big stake in the way the country is being run. Laws, approval of taxes, the budget, and all of that. So it's, and the Republicans control the Congress and the Senate now. So it's a Republican House, it's a Republican Senate, and it's a Republican president. Do you understand?
Yeah, I get you. So why do we think, and I think that for a lot of people in Ghana, they would probably go with the Democrats because of, you know, I'm sure the issue of racism, the migrants issues, and things like that. Why do people think or want to believe that the Democrats have a chance?
It's because traditionally, let me be fair to the Republicans. Traditionally, the incumbent president loses seats in a midterm. It's just a natural thing. Like now, I think there's a lot of antipathy against the NPP. They were arguing about the price of needle a couple of days ago and all of that, you know, because they see things are hard. So there's that thing about incumbency, right? There's an incumbency advantage, but there's also incumbency disadvantage, right? So traditionally, the president's party has lost the midterms. So in 2000, and you know, Obama came in 2009. So the midterms that year was 2011. That's when he used that popular word, shellacking. He said his party had been shellacked. They've been clubbed. They've been massacred. So the Democrats also lost that particular midterm.
But they didn't go on to lose the next general election.
So that's the trick about the midterms. It does not mean necessarily that you're going to lose the general elections. Right? It's just, you know, that's how voters are. Like, they're angry now, and so...
They're happy the next moment.
Yes. So that is why people think that the Democrats might take over the House, because there is an anti-incumbency urge over there. But then there are a couple of other factors, including Donald Trump's own actions.
Before we come to the issue of why should we care, let's talk about whether or not this particular election could be trusted, considering all the controversies that the 2016 election generated?
Well, that's a good question, and I wish I had the answers, because even in America, there is a lot of doubt and consternation. I mean, let's face the facts. There's an ongoing probe by Mueller into allegations of either collusions or interference in the last elections. As at the time that you and I are speaking, America's highest security networks, the FBI, the CIA, have conclusively said that there was some amount of cyber interference in the last election. So that concern is there. And recently, Facebook has not even solved its problems with the American Senate or the American political system, because it is still easy for people to put up fake political news information, negative advertisements, what they call disinformation, misinforming people on Facebook without identifying the source of those. And the data has shown that there are over 20,000 different advertisements on Facebook which have originated from foreign sources. Some of them in Iran, some of them in Russia, some of them in China. But
what is interesting is the last one I read about was generated from within the United States.
Yeah, so that accounts for the most of it. So, and there's that concern that fake news, and it started with Donald Trump himself, right, and conspiracy theories played a very big role in the 2016 election. So if you talk about the credibility of the election in terms of its organization, will somebody steal ballots, or would they tamper with the machine? Would they carry the votes away, or someone interfere? Probably not, right? Probably not. Or would the systems malfunction, or somebody hack into the computer or something? Probably not. I think that those elections are still sacrosanct, but there might be other subtle ways, you know, in which some form of interference or negative news, you know, is being propagated, and right, people are always liable to this sort of thing.
Why should Ghanaians care? Why should Africa be following this?
Well, because first of all, the US is a major global player. So a lot of times, things that happen in the US tend to have a concomitant effect in other parts of the world. The US economy is one of the largest in the world, and the US dollar is still one of the most popular currencies that is used globally. So anything affecting the US economy always has that like spiral, snowballing spiral in the rest of the world. But so that is just one. And we all know that there are major economies and major global players within the international political system. And so if these major countries call the shots within the international political system, either at the Security Council or at different areas, climate change conferences and all of that, the policies of the US president tend to influence Americans' participation or role in the global system. So if an American president feels that they have no business interfering in a war in Rwanda or wherever, it is likely that, and we all call on America when there's trouble all over the world. We look forward to them to intervene. And so if he thinks that his policy is not aligned to solving problems in Africa or whatever, that does not happen. Then we have USAID, for instance. So America engages in a lot of developmental and humanitarian work across the world. So under Donald Trump's government, funding to the USAID and other UN agencies have been cut or have been rolled back, which then tends to affect the kind of support that those organizations receive and the work that they do. Peasant farmers, agriculture, and even healthcare. The UNFPA has had its funding reduced, right? Because the Republicans don't necessarily believe in family planning and other things, so abortion and others. So that affects it. And then there's AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, where our textile manufacturers get to export. Then there's YALI, okay, the Young Africans Leadership Initiative.
Started by Obama.
Yes, started by Obama. So if an American president does not necessarily believe in any of these policies, all of these kind of bilateral partnerships or cooperations will be cut back. And there's this big saying in international affairs that anytime America coughs, the rest of the world catches a cold. So it is important. And immigration, which is one of the biggest.
Yeah, the caravan, for instance, the troops that we're told will be at the Mexican border to block the migrant from entering. That's also one of the biggest things.
Yes, so immigration is always a huge issue. So if you have an uncle in the US who is illegal, you have to be worried about that because he might be deported. He wants to cancel the DV lottery, and it's a lot of Ghanaians go to the US with that, the green card. So that is even under threat.
In recent days, there's also been the bit about people coming to give birth in the US, and having their children be citizens of the country when they are not.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So, there are a lot of people who travel there when they are like 6, 7 months or 5 months, and then they want to go in so that to be an American citizen. Well, that might come to naught because all those policies might be under threat. So, there are practical ways in which America's rules tend to influence other nations across the world. But even if for nothing at all, we live in an international system. We live in a globalized era. And whatever happens in one part of the globe tends to influence us in other parts of the world, whether it is about climate change policy, whether it's about education, whether it's about economic policy, the principles and the beliefs of the major superpowers. Whether it's Macron, Angela Merkel, or the US president, or the UK leader, whoever it is, I think that their attitudes, towards some of these biggest problems of the world tend to have shaped the international political system. So you look at the German leader compared to the American leader, and you realize that there are two very varying and oppositional, ideologies as to how the world should move forward, right? So I do think that whoever leads the US definitely is very important because his ideology shapes the international political system.
Okay, so we're told that Stacey Yvonne Abrams, a lawyer and novelist who served as minority leader of the Georgia House of Representatives from 2011 to 2017, is seeking to be elected as governor of Georgia. Oprah Winfrey has been campaigning for her hard. Question is, can she make it?
That's a very
when
interesting
Oprah
news.
supports you.
Yeah, it gives you the buzz. At least it also energizes your voters. She brings about that interest, and the extent you see the literature shows that celebrity endorsements tend to have a certain effect in terms of name recognition, exposure, awareness, interest, energy, and attention.
Okay.
So yes, it is important to that extent. But as to whether it will transcend that into behavioral change or affect voting patterns. I think there are a lot more factors that go into play to make that particular decision.
Okay.
So yes, and black voters are known to historically have a low voter turnout during elections, and it's even worse during the midterm elections because they stay back home and other things. So to the extent that she can be able to turn out black voters, remember that turnout is an important variable in the outcome of every election. And the more turnout you have, the better your chances. So she's important to the extent that she'll be able to galvanize and energize the African American base to turn out on election day to vote. And for a lot of young people and women, she has a lot of influence, on women, especially single mothers as well. So low income single mothers. So yes, that's to the extent that her influence.
Okay. So with that said, which party is winning, and by what margin?
Which party is winning?
Yeah.
Well, let me.
We would love to say the Democrats and the women.
Yes. I think, and this is purely based on the polls, right? So when I come to a conclusion, I need to base it on something. So this is based on realclearpolitics.com polling, based on CNN polling, and I believe the last one was the Rasmussen and Bloomberg polls. It shows that the Democrats are likely to take the House of Representatives, right? So right now, the House of Representatives is being controlled by the Republicans. I think the Democrats, that's what the polling is saying, are going to take over that. But then the upper house, which is the Senate, the Republicans now control it 51 to 49. It means that the Democrats have a deficit of 2. And they are unlikely to win the Senate because it is a much more difficult dynamic over there. And you do need both houses. I know plenty Ghanaians are interested in whether Donald Trump will be impeached or not. I know that is the bottom line of everything that they are thinking about. So for that to happen, you have to control both houses, the House and the Senate. Possible to get the House, which is the lower house, which is a big deal because if you don't have the House, you can't even introduce a bill of impeachment in the first place. Even if you did, it will fall short before even going to the Senate. So it's important. If they take over the Senate, the House, a big deal for them.
Can they?
Oh, yes. I think the chances are even more likely.
Okay.
Yeah. The chances, and 8 out of 10 polls show that they are likely to flip the House. Okay,
but we couldn't rely so much on polls back in 2016. Can we now?
That's why I'm a bit, I hold back a bit. You see, that's why I hold back, because we've been through this before. 2016. All the polling. Nate Silver of 538.com. And Nate Silver is like the worst kid when it comes to presidential predictions. He was like 99.91 points in the past elections. He said there was 1 in 6 chances of Donald Trump becoming president. Well, here we are. He's president, right? So I think we should temper, you see, our belief in those polls with the reality. And so I do think that surprises could still happen. There could be, and some of the races are just too close. Some of them are within the margin of error. You know, when a race is within the margin of error, that means that it could go on either side. Yes, it could go on either side depending on the number of the margin of error. So I don't count races that are within the margin of error, and I don't count races that are too close or neck and neck, because we've already seen a deficiency in the polling in previous years. So I think there is still room for surprise based on what we saw in 2016. And don't forget that Donald Trump is still largely popular in the US. You know, he's widely, especially among the middle class and the white suburban Midwestern population, the Rust Belt, the working class, the steel workers, you know, he's still very popular among them. And anytime he says, you know, those his so-called racist statements, I mean, it registers, you know, for it plays to his base. They call it a red meat. It's like feeding a dog with what they like, you know. So it plays to his base. So he's still widely popular.
We've heard about how some people dislike some of the things that he says, but they still support him anyways.
Yes, because they'll tell you that he's being real. They'll tell you they want an authentic president. And someone like David Axelrod will tell you that one of the first indicators of a successful candidate is authenticity. Immediately the voters perceive you to be phony, like Hillary Clinton. They think you are doing it, you are saying because you are a politician.
You might have something to hide. We can't see through you well.
Yes, but Trump is seen as authentic because he says what is on his mind anytime. He doesn't hide it. And although you might cringe it registers with a certain population as being, oh yeah, we like him. He tells it like it is. Go Donald, because they like the fact that he tells it like it is. So he still has some amount of influence. And we cannot be too sure until later on this evening, or I believe early tomorrow morning, when we'll get to see what the outcomes are.
Okay, so whether positive or negative for Trump, would it be sending a certain message to him?
Yes. The midterms do that. You see, because he is now sort of, quote unquote, master of all that he surveys. Come on, like, he won an election, and he destroyed the so-called blue wall, or the democratic basis. A Republican has never won an election in certain states in over 20 years, some of them over 30 years. And Donald Trump changed all of that. If you go to states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, a Republican has never won an election there in over 2 decades. Donald Trump changed that. I was there a couple of months before the election, and I did some interviews with people on the streets of Chicago, taxi drivers and very ordinary workers, middle-income people, and they told me that, they love Donald Trump. They love the kind of stuff he said. When he says that Africa is a shithole, like, they like that kind of stuff, right? So it will send a message depending on where it goes to see that, okay, is he for real? Like, we liked what he said on the campaign, but now he has become president. Do we really like that kind of presidency? Or wait a minute, is it all too much for us? We have a president who is tweeting at 3 a.m. in the morning. It has never happened before. He's Twitter president as well. So he controls the Twitter space. It's a president who engages in foreign diplomacy through Twitter, announces major whatever with North Korea, Kim Jong-un, on New Year's in the first week of the year. While people are celebrating the year, he goes on Twitter and he engages in so I think it will be a chance for us to see whether Americans are really buying into this kind of presidency. And from a global perspective, it has had ripples across the world. We've seen the rise of right-wing populist leaders in Italy. We've had Brexit. Recently in Brazil, we have their own right-wing leader emerge. People who are using rhetoric that is nationalistic, sometimes racial and inward-looking in sentiment. And even in Pakistan, we've had an Islamic fundamentalist, become president and overthrowing over 30 years of the Benito Bhutto and Anwar Sharif governments in Pakistan. So there is a global movement towards nationalism instead of globalization. All of this, you see, the election would give us an idea as to how people in the U.S. are receiving that brand of leadership.
Okay. And I wonder if the people in the U.S. see the kind of effects that a Donald Trump as president has on the rest of the world. Do they even care?
It's a good question. They care. They do care about what the rest of the world thinks about them and their president. But it's important to segment it, because you meet, I meet colleagues, people who are academics, people who are more liberal, in their outlook. When you go to the university campuses, the college campuses, you might be deceived, because these are people who are more open, in their worldview. They are more, cosmopolitan in their view of the world. So you are likely to hear sentiments like, oh, say our president, he's embarrassing us. Why is he saying that? Americans should show that this is not who we are. We are more than Donald Trump. They think he's an embarrassment to the world. But when you leave those corridors, you see, and you go to the rural communities, you go to the Midwest, you go to the inner communities, you go to the suburban, the steel workers, the coal workers, the miners, the ordinary people, the everyday American, the middle income people who feel the burden of the American economy. Really, they couldn't care less, about other countries. In fact, they are less likely to be concerned about global issues. If you realize, some of them are America is the center of the world. So for them, they might not care about that, about Donald's effect on the rest of the world. But it does not take away the fact that the American democracy and its presidency and its politics has a huge influence on democratic practice and politics across the world. In Nigeria, They cited an example of people who had gone on demonstration, the soldiers shooting into the crowd, using statements that Donald Trump made to justify that, right? So, and even the way they do their politics always has an effect on how people conduct politics anywhere in the world.
Interesting analysis. We wait to see what happens later this evening or tomorrow. It'll be interesting to speak to you again. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Echis Kanko. And we'll take a breather. We'll be back with more. You're on News Desk.